Did photography and portraiture come first, and then light and photography, among other things, being a process that deals and uses and is made manifest by light? Or was your exploration of light something that made you realise that actually photography was an interesting thing to experiment with?
Well, cameras for me have been a tool that, appropriate if it makes sense in the work and what my objectives are. If light is the raw data of image, then I'm using image capture, through a camera to create imagery. But it's photography when I was at Chelsea was it was pre-digitally. It was in the darkroom. It was it was a very different medium than it is today. When I do photographic projects, I surround myself with people who really know what they're doing with cameras. I'm not a photographer, contrary to popular belief, and why most of us perhaps are sitting here today to hear a photographer speak. Photography and cameras are a tool in my work, but it's really more about the light that we capture with cameras.
Nonetheless, your most celebrated work is a portrait, and it's actually one of the most remarkable portraits of power and majesty I think that's ever been made, which is the Lightness of Being, which is over there, which is the Queen. It is a great scenario. It was a commission in 2004, but just take us through, because I think people are quite fascinated by the access that one gets or doesn't get to powerful people as a portraitist anyway. I mean, we know that with Velasquez, that he probably had 2 hours in the presence of Pope Innocent X before he was, and catch some sketchy likeness before he was able to make that kind of portrait. I know Lucian Freud had a few days with the Queen. How long did you have, and how did the image come about?
Well, it was commissioned in 2004. The island of Jersey wanted to mark the 800 years since they broke away from France and pledged allegiance to the crown, and they wanted to mark that with a modern portrait. And I was pretty blasé about it till about a week beforehand, because I imagined that there would be all kinds of circles of bureaucracy and people telling me what they wanted inside the image, what she was going to be wearing, any props and any messages incorporated in the image.
I think they're called symbols of state rather than props.
Well, see, I'm not a portrait artist, so it was all quite surreal actually. A week before the shoot, I got a call from Buckingham Palace to say, what would I like Her Majesty's to wear? So I wanted to distill it into pure essence. So in how I was going to dress her, how I was going to, anything that was going to be included in the image, had to have some kind of meaning to it, but distilled so, to really get it to resonate. The morning of the shoot, we were setting up the camera and got an internal call to say, did I really need the crown? Unfortunately, George Bush was staying at the palace. Security had never been tighter, but they literally, Angela went, she came, put it down on the table, the Queen put it on her head, looked in front of the mirror, looked great, and then, away we went. I thought it was going to be a big ceremony and some kind of procedure, for putting the crown on. But
so we don't know what she or the palace think about it. They were deafening in their silence because they don't comment on.
Well, there's policy not to comment.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that she gave me, I had 2 sittings, 2 private audiences with her after that to show the work in progress. I mean, I made a very tight edit. And I wanted her to feel good about the work. I made an edit, and we chose the final image that was developed into equanimity, with her. And since we've given her a copy of both images, but yeah, it's she doesn't comment on as policy.
But let's go to Paul Smith, because he's performing for you, and if I didn't know him a little, I might suggest that having seen the Queen as she was, other people decided that they would do things for the camera, but he's naturally kind of animated in front of a camera. But is this something as a portrait artist, or an artist who makes portraiture, that you have to push to one side or tell people to forget, or is this something that you can build on?
Well, it was a hard act to follow. People asked me after I shot the Queen, well, who would you like to do? I mean, you've kind of shot, Grace Jones was like the other end of the spectrum, but it was always David Bowie and the Dalai Lama. For long as I can remember, I've wanted to do their portraits.
You did both?
And David Bowie, sadly, we were making some progress, it was going to happen, but, he died. But His Holiness the Dalai Lama, for a start, he doesn't sit for formal portraits. I put it out there to the universe, but I went to see a colleague of mine I hadn't seen for a while. We were doing a lot of work down the Eden Project, so we'd meet sometimes in Bristol. Met him off the train, went to give him a hug, and his phone rang. And I just get that, and it was Tibet House. Oh, you know Chris Levine, don't you? We're trying to get a hold of him for this portrait. He said, well, here he is. He literally passed the phone over. And, we realised then that there's something bigger going on. And, I had him for 15 minutes of time, and No, it was a great honour to do that, but it was, you know, it was also a big ambition.
I think we've hit our hour mark. There's good drink here, and in a sense, Chris can talk to you one-to-one.
Absolutely.
So let's end the formal part of this. But Chris, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.